Greetings and welcome to another River Radio Sports Central podcast powered by our friends at NovaCare Rehabilitation. Alongside Matt Varney from 103.5 ESPN, I am Darren Kinnard. And Matt, we had a big, long discussion last week about the whole public versus private debate. This week, the IHSA held its board meeting, and I don't know if they were listening to our podcast or what, but I mean, seriously though, they came out and they made some moves, and they made a statement about what the direction is going to be going forward.
Yeah, and I mean, they did probably about as close as they could do as a board by saying, okay, we're going to bring back the cycle to just once every single year instead of every 2 years. And the every 2 years, I think was the right decision at the time. But now with things like the Paul Prep happening, your hand is forced and you have to go to once a year. So this will affect schools by ones that are kind of on the borderline. They're going to be bouncing back and forth some years. But for the most part, this, I think, is the only answer that the board could present at this moment in time. And it's good that they are sitting there saying, we hear what everyone's saying, and we want to be able to try to fix the problem.
And basically, in a nutshell, what this boils down to is a school's enrollment has been on a 2-year cycle. And you had a school in DePaul College Prep that just exploded enrollment-wise, and they're sitting there based on their 2-year enrollment playing in 4A football, and this is a school of 1,300, which is bigger than Marion, Carbondale, Mount Vernon, all those type of schools. So they should have been in 5A to begin with, just based on their enrollment. They're allowed to be 7A next year after the multiplier goes back in for them. But by doing it yearly, it gives them the flexibility, them being the IHSA, to make adjustments each year, and you're not pigeonholed into, well, that's what it is for another year.
Yeah, exactly. And like I said, it'll hurt some schools that will, periodically on the borderline of these classes that see a little bit of fluctuation every single year that might bounce back every once in a while, and that could hurt those schools. But for the most part, this is the right move that, again, it was just about the only move that the IHSA could make at this moment in time.
And as we discussed last week, there's a differentiation in what the IHSA can do. The board can make policy.
Right.
But as far as bylaws, those are amendments that are proposed by the schools. They have to meet a level of approving in a straw poll to even get on the ballot, and then it's voted on by all 800 plus schools. And so the IHSA's ability to maneuver is, again, it's based on, they can only make some policy changes, such as what this is. They can't come in and completely restructure the way private versus public is counted.
And I liked how in the statement they tried to make that known as well by saying this is, what the board can do in terms of we create policies, and then all the other stuff comes from the member schools. They didn't say it as plainly, but they basically came out and said, hey, don't shoot the messenger. But they did what they could, basically. And, I as we sit here and look at it, I like it for the most part. It's just a matter of, again, I go back to those schools that are on the borderline that are going to be bouncing back and forth. And some years they're going to be the biggest school in their division, and sometimes they're going to be the smallest school. But you know what? When you aren't separating the two, this is, I think, the only solution you can come up with to say this will make things more fair. And it's going to hurt. There's no real simple solution that everyone's going to come out a winner on this. Someone's always going to be the loser in this, unfortunately.
Well, and as is the nature of social media, the reaction is, oh, they didn't do enough. That's ridiculous. That's just a bunch of word salad. And, the IHSA insert, blank, blank, blank. And, and my description of this is the first step.
Yes.
What the end product will be is when we determine whether or not this is, the IHSA as a whole is doing the right thing. You can't make that judgment on this very first step. Now, if they just kind of sit back in the shadows and let it kind of, continue to fester as has been the past few years, then the criticism is fair. But at this point, this is realistically the only thing that the board could do. And with no amendment on the ballot to vote here next week or later this week, this is what could go on.
Yeah, exactly. Like you said, it's the first step. And I'm impressed by them making the move so quickly. They could have sat there and waited on it and even maybe heard some recommendations and whatnot.
Oh, I think they heard a lot of recommendations.
I'm sure they did, but officially on the record recommendations. But they said, no, we've heard enough and we agree we need to make some sort of move. But yeah, if this is the only step that they take, then yeah, obviously it's not the right move. But they're at least showing right now by both how quickly they made the move and the fact that they made the move that it's something that they recognize that, yeah, we got to do something about this. And hopefully then that turns into more and potentially a bylaw in the future, but that falls more on the member schools.
And I've seen this another recurring theme of, well, we just need something else. The IHSA, we just need to do something else. And here's my deal is, I get it. Yeah. There are frustrations. There are certain things that go on that are just absolute head scratchers. I get that. But when you look at the overall body of work that this organization does for over 800 schools with 42 sports and activities, it's not just football.
Exactly.
It's not just basketball, but they take care of 42 sports and activities. I think overall they do a pretty good job.
Yeah.
Look, I get the frustration over public-private. I get it. I get the frustration, my personal frustration about the way things, the way seeds go and who gets sent where and all this and that. I mean, those are very surface level issues for me. And then, again, I know there's some deeper stuff with the way the setup goes. But at the end of the day, this is an organization made up of the schools. It is not a body that's going to come and rule with an iron fist. They have limitations what the board can do, but overall, this is a group that does a lot of positive things for the high school kids throughout the state and across the board, whether it's in sports. The high major sports, so to speak, or whether it's the activities that people go, oh, they do that.
Yep. Well, and there's just a lot of misunderstanding around the IHSA in the past couple of years, going back to the pandemic even, people not understanding exactly what the role is and everything of the IHSA. And I get it, because it's a little confusing when you're maybe not fully inundated like you and I are, but there's some people that think it's a complete government body and that they get taxpayer dollars. And this is a nonprofit organization. Now, granted, a lot of them do get good, healthy salaries, but they're doing this because they care about the sports and the kids. And I know sometimes their decisions don't seem that way, but they usually do have good intentions at heart here, and they're trying their darndest to make sure everything comes out right. And again, it goes back to what I said earlier about there's always going to be a loser in something somehow, some way, because there's so many schools involved.
And you're looking at, yes, there are a few people that are making significant salary, but the board of directors, those are all school administrators.
Exactly.
And so, again, you get back to the schools have the input of the direction that this thing goes. And, I go back several years to when, there was some noise coming out of Springfield about, the General Assembly wanting to take over the IHSA.
I remember that, yeah.
And so you think about it on the surface, basically the IHSA at that point had 20 to 25 people, doing all of this for 800 schools and 42, sports and activities. How many members of government would it take to do that?
Well, it would take a lot more, and it would take a lot more time for everything to go. What you saw on Monday night it would take a year to get to that step if it was controlled by the government and it had legislative bodies in there. Now, they do have some form of legislative stuff. Obviously, we've been talking about that the past couple of shows about the IHSA, but it's not the same. And if you turn it over to state government, you're going to be dealing with a lot of red tape that you aren't right now, and
that goes so well in other
exactly,
areas.
and it will turn less into a member-driven organization, and all of a sudden you will have people that are elected officials making these decisions that may not be for the best for the schools and the kids.
And again, at that point is, okay, who is this magic person or group that's going to come in and going to willingly take on 800 plus schools to run an organization to do that? What is their motivation? And then the flip side of that is it's great until they make a rule that people don't agree with.
Exactly.
And then the pitchforks are out going, well, this group is,
exactly. And then we'll be pining for the old days of IHSA once again. And you and I will be kind of putting our sarcastic comments out there saying, if only we had kept something around. So
we've seen this road, haven't we?
Yes, we have.
All right. So if we have any further updates from the IHSA or anything that plays into this, we'll certainly keep you updated on future episodes. But we shift our attention to the winter season. Basketball is underway, wrestling underway, bowling is going as well. In basketball, we've seen, first of all, Illinois is, I think, the tournament capital in the country.
Yes.
I believe there are, and I haven't confirmed this for the early months of 25, but I believe there will be tournaments every week except for the final week of the regular season in the spring or close to spring, and it's just crazy. But what kind of stands out in your mind, Maddie, here in these first couple of weeks of boys and girls, whether it's an individual or team performances?
Well, it's everybody kind of feeling everybody out right now more than anything. Some teams rise up, but that's because they're excited for the season to begin. Just seeing Murfreesboro last week, they look really strong and good. But it's also the start of the season. We can't go ahead and just crown them as one of the favorites just yet. As much as Daryl Murphy would love for me to sit here and say so, I can't reliably say that when you've only seen 4 teams so far. But it's a lot of fun. You get to know the team real quickly because there's 4 or 5 games, 6 games for some of these teams already in the books. And it makes for a lot of fun. Centralia looks fantastic. Pinckneyville looked really good. And, we've already gotten our Christmas tournaments out there. A lot of them are coming out. A couple of them still lagging along a little bit, but we'll see that all by the end of next week, I think, at some point. We're looking already towards the Christmas tournaments, and some of these are looking loaded right now, just because I follow Murfreesboro. Pinckneyville, that's on my mind, and that tournament looks loaded. Just a lot of these teams, but again, it's early season basketball where a lot of these teams have had success. But after this weekend, you might look at that tournament like, maybe not as loaded as I originally thought because a couple teams take bad losses one way or another.
I think in 1A, I think the 3 teams we thought would be the standouts, Waltonville, Meridian, and Goreville, I think that they've shown that was warranted.
Exactly. Yes, I agree.
And I think that you could have, any number of teams could kind of fill into that 4th spot, so to speak.
Sure.
When it comes to, these 4 teams are going to be in the sectional. Weber's, got Nathaniel Marlowe, who's as good a player as there is in the South. Steelville's off to a really good start.
Fantastic. They beat Carterville, yeah.
Right. So, there are some other teams in 1A that are off to good starts.
Woodlawn's a little surprising to me.
Well, Woodlawn, you mentioned Pinckneyville. Pinckneyville loses to Carlisle, and again, you can't transitive property scores, but Pinckneyville falls to Carlisle by 12. Woodlawn played them to 5.
Exactly.
In what was essentially the semifinals. So, Woodlawn's a team that, it's going to be very interesting when the W's match up in the Midland Trail. That's a battle any year, much less when both teams are good.
Especially because Woodlawn the past couple of years have been down, and so now at the early going of the season, at least, looks like they're finally back, and that's exciting. They went through a couple of coaches to get back there, but now they're back with Lou Cooper, and things are looking real good for them. And so excited because basketball is always better in the Midland and in Southern Illinois when you're talking about Woodlawn a little bit more. So I'm excited to see them back. But I don't know if they'll be one of the Final Four teams in the area when we're talking about sectionals, but right now they look fantastic, and I'm excited to see them in the conversation again.
And in 2A, Benton's probably, they're the team that made it the furthest last year, getting state runner-up.
Until they're proven otherwise.
And you've got the best player probably,
Tedeschi,
and I don't know that that's a probably when you've got a dude that's 6'9" that can step out to 25 and just he's such a difference maker at both ends of the floor. So they go down and sweep at Goreville, and again that's one of those. It's a good week to start. But we're going to see as they get into conference play. And then they, of course, go to Pinckneyville where you mentioned the field is loaded. Again, I think we'll know a lot more about a lot of teams, this time, in a couple weeks when we get ready to turn the calendar to 25.
Yeah, and for Benton, Goreville Invitational is a good ramp-up event for them. You're almost guaranteed to see Goreville in the championship game, and they set it up the past 2 years for them to be playing on the final day because they expect to both be 4-0 at that point. Personally, I'd like to see them in a different startup one just to challenge them a little bit more. But at the same time, you had in Harrisburg the past couple of years as well. It's a pretty good event right now for both teams to be in it. Obviously, Goreville, it's their event, so they should be in it. But it's gotten to be good. And Goreville is one of those teams that you're going to see at the end of the tournament for Benton. They're going to be always one of the top 1A schools in the area, so they're a good challenge for Benton to face without a doubt. But yeah, it's a good ramp-up event, if nothing else, for the Rangers, especially when they're as good as they are right now. Okay, you've gotten out to your 5-0, 4-0 start. What are you going to do going forward now is the question if you're the Benton Rangers.
And, again, there's several teams that I think that will be in the mix. You mentioned Pinckneyville, Nashville, Vienna. Nashville goes on the road and beats Vienna, which was a big win for the Hornets. Massac County, maybe down a little bit, but don't count out Joe Osmond's crew. They're gonna beat some people as we go.
And they're a little bit younger because they don't have Isaac Hosman and they don't have their sharpshooter, whose name is eluding me right now from last year. But they're a little bit younger this year. But that means that with Joe Hosman's experience, by the end of the year, they'll probably be playing the way that he wants them to, and that's when you want to be playing your best basketball. So it doesn't matter right now they're 2-3 or 3-2, whichever one it is. I can't remember off the top of my head, but they're not playing as well as maybe people have come accustomed to the past couple of years. But by the end of the year, that's when you really want to be looking out for the Patriots. If they're playing fantastic ball and they go on like a 5-game win streak at the end of the season, that means that Joe Hosman got them exactly where he wanted them to go.
And then in 3A, the South 7 just looks like it is going to be a slugfest every night with high-level basketball. Marion's already picked up a road win at Cahokia. Mount Vernon picked up the road win at Carbondale. And you mentioned Centralia earlier. I think, all four of those teams are going to be in the hunt with especially – Centralia, Mount Vernon, and Marion just battling it out all year. And again, those all look like threats to win regionals.
Yeah, well, and Mount Vernon was trailing Carbondale on Friday night by, I believe it was 12 points, and then Mount Vernon went on a, I think, 32-2 run or something like that. It was a crazy run. Carbondale had it in the bag, basically, and then Mount Vernon took it to another gear, more than just another gear, about 3 other gears, and they came back and made a huge run and beat the Terriers. That entire conference just looks completely loaded. And we mentioned those 3, but Carbondale is one to not to be looking over either. Absolutely. As well. So it wouldn't be surprised if Centralia came out of that division and they were undefeated in conference play. I also wouldn't be surprised if whoever comes out of it is sitting there with a barely over 500 record.
Well, and that Centralia goes to Mount Vernon Friday night, and that's always a bloodbath when those two get together. And again, Marion's a team that is young, but they are very skilled,
very experienced.
They have got even though they're young, they have a lot of experience, but they're skilled and they have got length and athleticism. They can throw a lot of different looks at you. Coach Gillespie has got himself a crew. Yeah,
without a doubt. Like I said, it's you said, it's a slugfest every single night in the South 7. Man, those are going to be a lot of fun games. I can't really say much more because I haven't seen them yet, but man, just you see those scores roll in, and you're like, man, the South 7 is loaded in a good way. The fact that they're going back and forth, this is good. This is iron sharpening iron, and it's not one of those type of things where it's like, well, that was a bad team against a bad team and just something happened. No, those were two good teams that they just kind of figured out each other's idiosyncrasies, and now they're going back and forth each quarter.
I would be hard-pressed to think that we will see an 8-0 champion in the South 7.
Agree.
And maybe not even 7-1.
Right. Yeah. That's what I'm saying. I wouldn't be surprised if you sit there and see a 5-3 type of conference champion. Honestly.
On the girls' side, we've seen some very interesting action early, and Vienna's been one of the early seasons. Ava Rush and Summer Daubert, quite a 1-2 punch at the guards for the Lady Eagles, and of course Nashville is the gold standard.
Always.
In 2A, made it to the state championship game. They had a rough patch Saturday in a shootout over at Swick. They lost to a team out of St. Louis. And they lost by 16, which makes me want to see that team out of St. Louis. Yeah. How good are they?
Right, exactly. But man, they're always so good. But this year, especially, it's like, oh, they're right back up to that top tier level. But to take that 16-point loss, also at the same point, that is, how good is that team if Nashville's taking that type of loss? But nonetheless, I mean, they are looking fantastic. Everybody that you just met, Vienna, Nashville, they're looking great. Harrisburg's looking good. Marion's looking good. They had a little bit of a slow start to the season, but Eric Griffin's now got them rolling. It's the usual suspects, but they are all looking just fantastic.
And also in the South 7, Marion and Mount Vernon going to shape up to be quite the battle there. And Marion under Coach Griff is young, and so you feel like their best ball is in front of them.
Yeah.
But at the same point, they're not. They're here now.
Yeah, exactly.
I mean, they are serving notice that they're going to be a factor.
Yeah, well, and that just speaks to just how good Griff is as a coach as well. Had a couple of years. He was on sidelines, but not as the head coach, and then gets this opportunity at Marion, and I was like, that's a perfect opportunity for him right there. That program kind of needed that lift right there, and to have Griff right there and being able to do what he's been doing already, it just goes to speak to just how well he speaks X's and O's and gets to his kids so easily.
And he certainly has the coaching pedigree, both as an assistant and as a head coach, having taken Meridian to the state championship game on the boys' side. Well, it's going to be a busy few weeks with a ton of games and gyms all over. We got tournaments all over the place coming up. We'll do one more podcast before the holidays, and then we'll probably take a week or so off to survive.
We're gonna be busy
to survive tournament to survive Tournament Central, and then we'll come back after that and give a full recap. And again, I think we'll be able to have a little better feel for the bigger picture of what we're going to see down the stretch.
I'm really interested, since I'm the Murfreesboro guy. I'm really interested to see how they do this week against Massac County and Meridian. Two pretty good clubs. When you go to Massac County, you're walking into, again, another type of bloodbath type of game. Darryl Murphy and Joe Hossman, best friends, but also the worst of enemies. And their teams always make it personal somehow. I'm interested to see how that goes Friday. And then Meridian's a great test as well for them. Cade Brooks looking fantastic. Last year he had a down year compared to his sophomore year. This year he's already hit 14 threes in 4 games. And then Kemion Hale is a load, is what Coach Murphy actually said to me after their win over Sparta the other night. So I'm looking to see how well they do. This weekend might be kind of are they for real, or was that just opening week, things going your way? So if they continue that, look out, everybody. They might be exactly what you think they are.
And that Murfreesboro Meridian game, part of the
Get Down,
Illinois Get Down at Carbondale, the 2-day shootout event, 3 games on Friday, 10 varsity games on Saturday. Meridian's actually playing twice on Saturday.
Yes, I did see that.
They're playing at 11 against a team, I believe, out of Georgia, I believe.
Yeah.
And then they've got Murfreesboro at 3:30. So again, they will play anybody.
They will.
It doesn't matter.
Exactly. They don't care. And I'm pretty sure when I was at DuQuoin last week, I saw David Davis in the stands somewhere, and my partner Steve Webb said, well, that'd be a big trip. And I was like, but you got to scout him,
Right.
Especially because you may not just see him this Saturday. You could see him in the Pinckneyville tournament as well if you're Meridian. So
No doubt. Well, that's going to do it for this edition of the River Radio Sports Central podcast, powered by our friends at NovaCare Rehabilitation. For Matty V, I'm Darren Kinnard. Have a great week, everyone, and we'll talk to you again next week.